I think about trees a lot, but I'm like, trees aren't just out here like, uh-oh, that storm just changed my direction. No, trees like, okay, storm came through. I'm still an oak tree. Like I'm still an oak tree, And I'm like, what is so true in you? What is your oak tree aspect of yourself that is like, no matter what this life brings, like there's a fundamental aspect of me that is fully embodied.
Welcome to Bitch Talk. I'm your host, Erin.
And I'm co-host Ange, aka Captain Party.
And for more than 11 years, the show has celebrated underrepresented voices in pop culture and beyond.
But not in the snore kind of way, which is why our listeners and followers have graciously voted us Best of the Bay, Best Podcast on 48 Hills for 3 years in a row. Three-peat, bitches.
If you like what you hear, follow us on Instagram and check out our website, Bitch Talk Podcast, and rate us wherever you listen to podcasts.
We're begging you to judge us. When does that ever happen? Oh, you're not going to say anything?
Oh, what'd I say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, on that note, on with the show. Clink.
Hi, how's it going?
Oh, we're so happy to see you.
Oh, it's good to see you too.
I already feel comforted. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I don't know how to do this introduction because it's been 4 years since we had you on, and man, it's been 4 years.
What a 4 years.
Going on 40.
Yeah, going
What a
on
40.
100.
Yeah,
But
nonstop.
yeah, what I'll say is we're welcoming back to our show Adrienne Maree Brown. You have a lot of things that you do, but I wrote down an intro for you if you're okay with that.
Yeah.
I just writer, social justice leader, witch, healer, and a meme queen. Is that
I'm here
okay?
for it. That feels all true.
Did I miss anything?
Auntie.
Oh, that is the best. That is the best job.
Yeah.
My favorite title.
I'm super into it. Last night I was getting like downloads on one of my nibblings crush, and it was just like, oh, this is the sweetest.
How old are they?
Well, I'll just say they're in their teenage years. And so it's just that sweet thing of like, I think especially in this time, like there's just so much that's like, God, we're giving young people such a hard world. And then when they find beauty inside of it, when they find connection, and you're like, okay, you're gonna be okay. Like you know how to move towards connection. Like there's just something, I don't know, reassuring in that. As an auntie, I'm like, I just don't want you to be miserable. I don't want you to not want to connect with other people. And that's happening with so many young people right now. So
That's real. Yeah. We all here, I think, have a lot of people in our lives that have really young ones and have teens and also have some 20-year-olds. And just hearing their stories and then reflecting back on like how we grew up and feeling a certain way about how it is now versus how it was then. I mean, I think all the generations do that, but it's rough
But
out
we're
there.
right when we say it.
Yeah.
We're the first
we are right.
I mean, elders that are.
Yeah, we have like this really interesting moment where it's like every generation does say it, and then it's like, oh, but this generation, like it actually is rare that there's a global pandemic, that a generation faces. Or we've never been in this state of hyper connectedness, like where like young people, there's just no like bubble, that we can keep young people in. It's like everything's gonna be okay, or it's just sort of like it's not okay, we're not okay, but we love you so much. And like I think the thing that keeps giving me faith and hope is that there are all the young people in my life are like, I understand what's going on, and I really understand this world, and I like all of them have a more intact sense of values at a much younger age than I remember. Like I don't think I feel like I was in my 20s before I started to be like my values, and I feel like when I talk to kids these days, they're like, yeah, I'm just like, wow, are you like 11 and you already have like a really intact sense of like values and what feels right and wrong to you? And, yeah.
Thank you.
Ooh.
I am glad that you said that, because I do go back and forth between like worrying. I have goddaughters, they're 9, they're twins, worrying about their future with social media and everything that's happening. But I also learn so much from them. Like my, one of them, I was reading through her journal and she wrote, "It's okay to get sad." Like she tells herself these
Uh-huh.
things that
Uh-huh.
I'm just like, and then what? I'm like, teach me how to be
Yeah.
that expressive and accepting of my
Yeah.
faults. So,
That's right.
and another thing I wanted to say was, I was talking to a friend about our role as aunties, and how our friends with kids, they need our help more than ever to make sure that these kids grow up knowing all these things and having all the tools, because they're just trying to stay afloat. So as aunties, we can add that extra flair of like, teach them these skills, teach them empathy, giving back to your community, all these things. It's like, even though we don't have kids, we have such an important role with the future.
Exactly. Exactly. I feel like this in some ways that, yeah, I'm just like, oh, I'm really grateful that I'm friends with people who have had kids and that I've gotten to be close enough to them to feel like I'm shaping with, like I'm just like, oh, I get to be part of your support system. I get to be part of your idea of like even just what a human can be, like I remember that when I was a kid, like that there was like one of my aunties was like a little wilder and she was, it's just like when she would take me out, we'd go get grape soda and there was always just a little mystery and a little like, I was like, she's also a grown up, but her jeans are ripped and she just still feels cool. And I had another auntie who was like super fashionable and wore all these bright clothes and there's just like all these imprints for me of like how my aunties were like, oh, you can rebel or you can stand out in this world. Like this is a model of how you can be and that just provides a different take from what your parents are offering. And there's something so beautiful and intimate that, and then just knowing like, oh, there's so many people who love me. Like not just my parents love me unconditionally, but like these other people do too. So yeah, I'm really grateful I got chosen to be an auntie to so many cool kids this lifetime.
Yeah. Um,
Mhm.
but you're here to also talk about your book. It's just about to drop. But I mean, we got to
I
get to the
have a
meat and
book.
potatoes of this. You have a
Well,
book?
it's called Ancestors, so
Yes.
we're there,
Yeah, we're talking
Yeah.
about it all.
we're on the
All connected.
frequency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is the third in the trilogy that's about to come out. Can
Yes.
you tell our audience a little bit about the trilogy and about
Sure.
this part of I guess, the end of it? And
Yeah.
yeah, that it's coming out.
Yeah. So the book, it's the Grievers trilogy, and it's 3 books about a plague that happens in Detroit that targets Black people. And in the first book, we're with the child of patient zero, who is just, we're just right there next to her as her name is Dune. And we're just like with her as she goes through the process of like watching her mother die and then having to figure out along with the city that like something much larger is actually playing out. And she's in her own grief and also having to figure out like, am I going to stay here and try to survive in this place even though everyone's dying or everyone's evacuating, or like what do I do? And we get to watch her kind of awaken the part of her that wants to survive. It's very gentle, but it's present. And then in the second book, which is called Maroons, which honors that legacy of like building maroon community, finding a place where it seems unlivable or other people don't want to be, and making a way there, which is part of our Black history in this country and history in Jamaica and other places. Um, so I explored like Detroit as a maroon city, and like we pick up with Dune. We watch her start to build community and connect with other survivors who are in the city, um, and start to understand like what life could look like on the other side of apocalypse. And there's magic. So the people who don't die seem to awaken small magic, not huge magic. Nobody's got like one big magic, but everybody has small magics. And Dune's magic is sort of this ancestral spell casting that she doesn't even quite understand how she's doing it, but she can surrender enough to do it. And part of the magic ends up helping a wall grow around the city, like a natural wall of like vines and protection. But it's basically like the city is like, okay, if you want protection, if you want to be here, like I'll meet that. I'll meet that and I'll be safe. I'll provide safety for you. Um, so those are the first two books. And then I got to the end of the second book and I was feeling so great. It got released and I was like, yes. And I was like, okay, it's time to write the third book. And I sat down, I was like, oh shit, I think I wrote a utopia, like accidentally wrote my people into this utopia. Like I really wasn't intending to do that. But I was like, now they're just in this beautiful pocket that's held safely. And like, what else do I need to say? And then I was like, oh, right, utopias don't exist without dystopia. And like, you don't want to create a solution in which there's just these little people that get to live in this pocket. And so then the third book, Ancestors, is like them figuring out both how they relate to the ancestors, the ghosts, the spirits that are still in Detroit, and troubling the idea of death and non-death. And, you know, there's a way in which I don't know, you know, it's always like this question of like, am I alive? Are we alive? Are we already dead? Is this like a purgatory? Like, where are we? I wanted to play with some of those ideas, and I wanted to play with like, do we have to completely surrender utopia? Can we make utopia more accessible? Like, what is the move? And I'm like, if we're in relationship with nature and we're in relationship with the earth, what does the earth also want for us? So that's what this final book is like exploring like, okay, we're here. Do we want to stay here? Are we trapped here? Can we go? Can we create other pockets of safety? Like, what do we do? So there's a lot of community sort of figuring stuff out, and there's love stories, there's sex, there's adventure. Um, Yeah. It's just like it was beautiful, you know, to get to write this because I lived in Detroit for 12 years and each character is sketched or composited from people that I lost during the time that I was living there. So it was a very emotional experience to have to end the book, you know, and to be like, okay, like I found a way to keep all these people alive with me for a few more years. And um, in a way, I guess in the stories, they get to go on perpetually. So
Mm.
yeah, so that's what I'm going to be back in Detroit in a couple days to release the book.
I,
Yeah.
I find it so interesting that you set out to write this trilogy, but you didn't know how it was going to end when you started. So can you talk about how within those 4 years, 5 years, how what was going on in the outside world informed
Yeah.
the story?
Sure. I mean, I actually started writing this back in 2011 and I was in Detroit and when you would get driven around Detroit, when I was getting shown the city, introduced to the city, falling in love with the city, a huge thing that was happening was people are always pointing out what was there that's no longer there. So there would be like entire blocks, or it would be like one house on the block, and whoever was showing me would say, and this used to be a full city block with tons of families and all this stuff happening. But then the auto industry pulled out of Detroit and capitalism, there was this massive crash, economic crisis in the 80s. And so people would say, so this is all that's left. You know, the population went from being over 2 million people down to about 700,000. And so you just imagine like this emptiness, the city, the layers of ghost cities that are now coexisting with the city. I mean, I could drive around at night without stopping for streetlights. I could see pheasants and wild. They're just like there's such an encroaching sense of like, is this city going to stay a city? Is it going back to the wild? Like, is it already a ghost city or no? But there's still something vibrant and black and special here. And like, there was a ton of gentrification happening as well. And so I was thinking about how much grief gets generated from gentrification, but there's not a process for that, right? Like we don't have a way of collectively holding like this city was taken from us, this block, this neighborhood, this community was taken from us. Our dream for this place has been displaced by usually a white wealthy dream, right? So I was all that stuff was happening when I first started writing it. And I had written probably the first two novels, like most of what went into the first two novellas, I had written by like 2016 or 2017. And then when AK Press decided they wanted to launch a science fiction imprint. And I was like, they approached me and they're like, do you have anything that could fit in this? And I was like, I do have this thing that's been like a short story and a play and a novel. Like I kept trying to write the story in all these different ways. So I sent them what I had and they were like, this is the first two books of a trilogy, actually. And let's approach it that way. And it was so exciting. You know, these are like dream words to hear as a new baby fiction writer. It's like, what? Like, okay, let me see. Um, so I reworked them into these novellas and then of course by the time they're coming out in 2021 and everything, it's like now COVID's come. And so all of a sudden I'm like looking around and being like, okay, what am I like? How did I do with how I thought this might go down and what's actually happening? And I'm pretty pleased with what I understood to be like the overwhelmingness of this time. So like this thing is happening in Detroit, but it's like some people are paying attention, but like a lot of people can't because there's just so many other things happening in the world. And I think that that's one of the things we can look forward to in this next period of time is like being so impacted by what's happening to each of us in our cities, by the climates that we're in, by the political issues we care about, by the economy that we're plugged into. I think what it means to live in the US particularly is going to keep diverging and being these wildly different experiences. You know, I keep saying this, but like there was a set of tornadoes in St. Louis a couple weeks ago, and I just had no idea for days that that was happening because so many other things were happening. And so I'm like, oh, what does it feel like to be in St. Louis having these tornadoes, or in Altadena with the whole city burnt down, or in Asheville with everything flooded, and be like, okay, like maybe we registered for like a day or two of your news, but like we're here now having to rebuild our entire world or decide to stay or to go. So all of that started, you know, I was like, this is an overwhelming time. And then the third book I got to write really landed in this time and being like, okay, what is it I most wish for us? And the answer was, I really want practice ground for us to learn how to be humans with each other in a different way, in a way that acknowledges our spiritual connection, in a way that acknowledges the earth, and in a way that acknowledges our divergence. You know, like in the third book, there's like some of the people are like, if I can't leave here, I don't want to stay. Like now it feels like a prison, even though it's a safe, awesome place. But if I can't go, I, you know, I didn't choose to just be in here with you. Like you just grew some magic wall around me. So it's really being like, oh yeah, like people are going to disagree. People are going to have different desires for their lives and what they want to do. So I was really trying to, yeah, those are some of the things that were happening for me. And I'm grateful, like the way the plague works in this book, it ties into grief, but it is man-made. And I feel grateful that I made that choice. You know, I was sort of like, do I want this or not? But I'm glad that I made that choice because that's one of the things when I look around now at what's happening, the troubles are made by humans.
Mhm.
You know, like we are really the virus of our time and our place. And I think we have to really contend with that. It's like something in us has to choose to evolve, or I think we are going to go extinct. And, or I think we're going to go in a meaningful way, you know, we'll be on, you know, um, not having lives that feel compelling or exciting to live. And one of my goals, which I learned from Octavia Butler, was like, let's write the truth as much as we can, but like, let's build some compelling thread into it that makes us want to keep going and keep trying and keep reworking the human experiment.
Hmm. Of all
Yeah.
the things that you do, is writing the balm that heals you, especially with
Yeah.
like you just said, with everything that's going on and our attention being pulled in so many ways. Is this the way that you're like, okay, I can sit here and
Yeah.
do this?
Yeah. I mean, you know, I always feel bad because I'll hear people talk about writing and they're like, writing, it's so hard. I'm writing a book, it's so hard. Or like, and I'm just like, oh gosh, like I feel so differently about the practice of writing. Like I write every day. I have to write every day. It feels like my primary lover. You know, it's like I'm like I can be at the dinner table and I'm like, I've got to sneak away to the bathroom because I've got to write something down right now. Or like um I just love writing. And then, you know, in times that are really overwhelming, it's the way that I'm able to process something all the way through my system. So it's like something horrible comes in, I see it, I feel it, I have to sit with the truth of like, okay, this is what humans are doing now. And here's my complicity. Here's where I'm participating in whatever horrible thing. Because that's what it means to be a US citizen, particularly. Is like, okay, like we are shaping and pushing and investing and bombing, and like we're responsible for so much
Mm-hmm.
of the harm that's happening right now. The burden of superpower, right? So being in that space and being like, okay, what do I do with all this? And writing, it does become the way. And some of the writing is like writing for others, but more and more I'm giving myself permission to like write for myself, like really just write a song, let it come through, sing it, write a piece, write a poem. And sometimes I'll choose to share those out. But the next book I'm working on is a collection of love stories. And so I'm really like letting myself just write things down that I'm like, what's the truest thing I know? You know, what's the truth of how it feels to love right now? Things like that. So yeah, the writing is for me, I'm just like, I'm so grateful I have that as a way to process what I'm experiencing in the world. And it's also, message in a bottle, like in the original sense, where it's like I'm stranded, but I'm going to put this message in a bottle with the hope that like someone somewhere will receive it, and maybe I'll be saved because I'll be connected, and or at least I won't be fully forgotten or something. And there's a message in a bottle quality for me to writing where I'm just like, okay, like I'm feeling something, and it's so like, some of the stuff we feel right now, it will make you feel crazy, right? Like right now, so many people now are being like, oh yeah, what's happening in Gaza is wrong and it needs to stop. But like, you know, I was writing something about that 2 years ago or whatever. It's like writing about something and being like, is anybody out there feeling this way?
Mm-hmm.
Is there anyone out there? And the message in the bottle goes out and someone comes back and they're like, I'm feeling exactly that way. And you're not alone in it. And um, it helps for me, it helps so much to tie in emotionally and just be like, okay, so if I'm not alone, then there's more than one person, and more than one person can change the world. Like I really don't believe that one person can change the world or transform the conditions just on their own. But I think as soon as as that two or more are gathered, and then you start to create culture, you start to create an alternative, you start to create a way of being. And if I've been reading all this stuff about the earth being alive, like the earth being this big sort of central system. And if that's the case, then we are bacteria or we are the cellular structure or something. It's like, what are humans inside of that mix? But lately I've been like, well, maybe we're all in the brain. Maybe humans are like some kind of earth brain or something. And so we've got to make new ruts, right? Like in a brain, like you're like, oh, if I've only experienced one thing and I've only been told one thing, my brain is wired to
Mm-hmm.
think a certain way, to respond a certain way, to draw on a certain set of memories. So I'm like, I've got to make a new ruts. I've got to make new ways of being, like imprint those into the sort of collective mind or the collective brain. So, um, yeah. So for me, the writing is also the way I'm like, oh, like something has to recode us. And for me, poetry has recoded me so many times. Music recodes me.
Mm-hmm.
Like it allows me to become something different, think something different, feel something different.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I'm gonna need to process that for a while, but
That's a new rut.
yeah, I'm like, whew, mind is blowing. Yeah, but I
Metaphors
so
go, they go off.
no, something so
I'm already
beautiful.
crying. It's
There's
fine.
something so beautiful about you, Adrienne, is like your message is so clear, your voice is so present, like you get it, like you read we read your stuff and we're with you. And I think what's hard for me and what I'm trying to figure out is what fully my activism looks like, because our mine isn't going to look like yours or somebody
That's right.
else's. I have to
Right.
find what mine is. And for Aaron and I, we've talked about bitch talk, obviously being a
Yeah.
major form of activism for us that helps us. But
Yeah.
do you have advice for people who, are well intentioned, but like something stopping them from finding that
Yeah.
their own voice that's not performative, that's truly theirs?
Yeah. I mean, I think what you just said, the not performative is like such it's such a big piece of this, right? And sometimes I'm like, it's okay to perform a little bit. So when I was young, when I was first becoming an activist, I think back to that time when I was first getting politicized. Like I wouldn't have even said activist because I was being politicized by organizers, and they were like, organizers, being an activist is lightweight or whatever. Like so I was being politicized by people who were like, dive into the deep end. But at the very beginning, it was like, I want to be with these cool people, like clearly revolutionary framework. That's cool. Like these are people who are like, oh, we want freedom and we want to like be badass and we want to be sexually liberated. And we like, I was just like, yeah, whatever they're doing, I want to put that on a little bit. So I think it's okay if you look out in the world and you're like, what are some of the people who I see who are trying to create change in the world? And I can try to take that on a little bit and be like, yeah, like, what if I was badass like Angela Davis, or something, right? Right now, I'm hoping like tons and tons of young people are able to look at like a Greta Thunberg or something and like that and be like, wow, like that's a young person who is taking up space and saying like, you're going to listen to me. Or I hope that people look at elders who are showing up and taking big direct actions and be like, wow, like imagine living a life where you are still awakened and you still cared as much as that older person does to show up right now. Because I think that's one of the things is like to be an activist or to be an organizer, someone, it's like you have to stay in contact with a part of you that is earnest and that does care about things. And one of the things that, the world that we're swimming in of capitalism and hierarchy and this sort of fake democratic process we're in right now, there's all these things that are meant to numb you and sort of dull you down, keep you very distracted, make you think that nothing can make a difference, make you very cynical, right? So you can spend the entire miraculous human experience just being like, meh, right? And I'm like, meh, have you seen a river? Like, are you like, what's going on? It's amazing. Like, go outside, be here, live, So to be an activist, I look up to folks who do the work for a long time. And so as a writer, like I look up to folks like Bell Hooks, I look up to folks like Toni Morrison, Audre Lorde, June Jordan. People were like, I'm going to write as honestly as I can about my time. And that was the primary aspect of their organizing, their activism was like, my work is to help shape the ideologies and bring the poetry, but someone else has a different role, so there's some folks who are like, you might be someone who's an incredible artist, how is your art helping capture and change the way people think about this time? You might be someone who is embedded in a conservative family or conservative space. Your activism might actually be how you deal with your family. I think we've made some big mistakes in the past 2 decades, of sort of politicizing ourselves to a degree that we hold a very high standard for how people can interact with us, which is yay. But I think what happens when you're dealing with political difference is we become intolerable. So I think that like a lot of people's perception of, especially activists on the left, is like we're intolerable. Like we're always correcting them. We are not fun to have at a party. We're not fun to have at the dinner table. Like we're going to make you feel bad about yourself, whatever. Right.
I'm only laughing because no,
I'm
yes.
raising my hand. I was like, this is me. I'm the one who's like, well, actually, the history. Right. So it's like trying to check that part of ourselves and be like, what if my activism is like finding ways to stay in deep connection here? And what if my activism is to find ways to keep awakening the curiosity of these people that I love and that I can still see the humanity of? So a lot of my work, like when I'm with family, I'm really like, how do I stay normal? How do I be a human being? How do I not imagine myself being better than these folks? How do I not imagine them being better than me? Or like, how do I de-hierarchicalize the situation and then bring some humanity back in? I had a talk, I was with some extended family recently, and one of my uncles who I adore was talking about immigration. And I was able to just sort of be like, well, let me rehumanize these people that you're speaking of. And like, that'll be my activism today. Right. I'm like, this will be the move that I need to make because, I will say we're in a time where it's not enough to just be yelling at each other. And that's why the performative piece, I'm like, we have to dance with it, right? It's like, it's okay to put it on and be like, I want to be a badass revolutionary. Okay, great. I want to make a change in the world. Awesome. But then the next step is like, how do I not just get online and do a big performance of having an opinion? Like that in and of itself is not enough. How do I find the place where I'm also directly making some change? And I think our families are actually really important places. I think we have to be really wary of the pattern of like being able to go tell the world about itself, but not have a conversation one to one with someone who's actually different from us. So I'm like, if I can't talk to someone who's actually different from me, I'm not actually doing anything different than the people who are oppressing me. Like I'm just finding a different pocket and trying to hold it, make it exclusionary. I think one of our biggest jobs as people who are activists or organizers or want to change the world is helping to keep building inclusivity, keep building divergence, keep building our tolerance for as wide a range of people as we can, to be able to see the humanity of as many people as we can, to be able to create space for recovering from harm. And then, like, on a very basic level, boycott, right? Like, if you haven't figured out what to do as an external thing yet, one of the most powerful things we can do because of the way money runs our country is to engage in pretty significant boycotts. And right now we have boycotts on Target, boycotts on Amazon, boycotts on all these places where we're actually seeing big numbers, billions of dollars of impact because people are saying, I'm not going to go to this place anymore. I think sometimes we get so stuck in like, what's the big thing I can do, that we don't do all the small things that are part of collective action that really help. Um, but boycott is a really beautiful one. If you can find your way into the streets, if you can, go to the marches, and those things really help, because if we leave a small group of people, if we're sort of like, oh, those people who care, they're going to handle all the showing up and the yelling and the pushing back, right? Then it makes it more and more dangerous for those people to stand up and to speak out. The more people who show up, literally just en masse, to be like, I actually also care about this thing,
Mm-hmm.
the less in danger anyone is for standing up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of why we say that, early on in any struggle, it's just like, go ahead and articulate your support, go ahead and show that. um, I think the last thing I'll say is, like, wherever you work and wherever you have agency over how the policies of a place are shaped, let that be a front line where you're really working to move the values that you most care about. I think that we forget that we're like, oh, we're swimming in the waters of this stuff. So we might be like advocating for equal pay, but are we giving it in our workplaces? We might be advocating for like a nurturing economy, but like, are we building nurturing systems within the places that we're creating? Like, do our folks have childcare? Do our folks have maternity leave? Do our folks have good sick days and know that they can use them and do? Do our folks go on vacation and take care of themselves? Do our folks, um, yeah, have pay equity? Like all these things that I'm like, we each have these little small places where we can be practicing the world that we want to see. Um, I do think we're at a crossroads right now where a lot of people who have been organizing for a long time are like, something's got to change.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we actually know exactly what the changes are that are needed yet, right? Like, I've articulated some of what I think they are in emergent strategy and in pleasure activism. I
Mm-hmm.
think we need to make movement a joyful sanctuary type place that people want to move towards and feel welcome in, and where it's fun and it feels good to, it feels satisfying. It's like I can see my work working. So I think some of it's there, but I think there's more that we've got to like feel our way into and be really humble about. um, but if you're coming in and you're like, I'm just getting started, I would also just say, don't take it personally if there's some curmudgeons and some cynical energy right now and some heartbreak in the people that you're meeting. Because for those of us who've been doing the work for a couple of decades, this is a really heartbreaking experience to go through, to be like, but we know what's going to happen to the earth, and we know what happens when we bomb things, and we know what we need to be focusing on, and we're just not, and that's devastating. um, and and then still you get up the next day and you keep going, you keep trying, and you find those small wins.
It feels like, the powers that be now and maybe forever is they're always like hard edged, right? Like it feels hard. And it feels cruel specifically right now. It feels very cruel. And now I'm looking at my sign, which is pretty rough and says fuck fascists. And maybe it should say hug a fascist. I don't know. I'm feeling a certain
No,
way.
no, I think
You
what
know
it
what I
is,
mean?
right?
Like,
But
do
I
you
see
need
what you're saying,
hugs?
Or
right?
hug a
That
neighbor.
Hugs?
rough
Hug a
edge,
neighbor,
right?
I
Yeah.
think.
Because
Yeah.
I would say that hug a neighbor, hug your friends, hug your people, but there's something about like I understand that hard line, all cops are bastards, like everyone, like this energy. But I think one of the things is like being able to say, fuck this idea. This idea is actually not compatible with humanity, but not fuck you. You're humanity, right? Like you are a person. What I'm concerned with when I come across anyone in my life who has fascist leanings, who's comfortable with Zionism, who's comfortable with extreme capitalism, who's comfortable with racism. There's people who just don't. I'm like, you're comfortable with it. What that means is when you see it, you can justify it, you can explain it, you might believe it. So when I come across folks like that, I'm like, I have to be concerned with what happened to you. How did you get there?
Mm.
What story were you told? And what do you think this story is going to yield for your life? Because I have a different story. I'm living in a different story. And I felt like I had to kind of jailbreak myself out of the political imagination I was born into, right? I was born into a military family.
Mm.
I was given a very patriotic start to life. I was like, the US is obviously the best country in the world. And like, of course, we have bases everywhere and we're in control of everyone and everyone relies on us for everything. And like, yeah, we're just the best, obviously. And the fall from that, right? The
Mm.
fall from that ideology was so unmooring. My sister and I just did an episode of our podcast, How to Survive the End of the World, called I'm the Hell. And we're talking about that getting politicized from that patriotism all
Mm.
the way out to a place where I'm like, I identify as post nationalist. I think that because the US experiment was rooted in so much harm and so many wounds that have not been addressed, I don't think it'll ever fully work as an experiment
Yep.
as it's constructed. And I'm really curious about what else is possible with indigenous leadership, with collaborative leadership, with feminist leadership, um, with leadership that really wants like as many people as possible to have a good life
Yep.
on a beautiful land, like um, so, but that's a process you go through. And I think right now a lot of people need to go through it. So I don't mind like if people land in a very hardcore place because they're not politically wrong. It's like, yeah, fuck fascism. Like that's a horrible thing. It
Yeah.
doesn't work. It's never worked. It's always been really bad for people. I think we can say, yeah, fuck that one. And I also think there's other ideas that we can say that too. And then there's ones where I'm like, okay, like saying that might cut us off from some folks, right? And so you have to think like, is my strategy served by this hard line, or would it be better served by some softening here? And
Mhm.
I think that's when you start to get local again, right? So
Mm.
there are different places, different people responding differently to. I mean, it's like we're just not a monolithic people. Like there's so many ways of being, and I keep thinking about like who actually stands up in these moments that really moves me. Almost for me, almost always it's the people who've come the farthest. The people who are like, I was fully indoctrinated in a cult mentality of superiority, whether it was white superiority or nation superiority or gender superiority. I was fully bought in. And I came all the way around to, oh, we're all equally deserving of this beautiful miracle of life. And like, none of us are fundamentally better or worse than each other. No place is fundamentally better or worse than any other. Like, just that equalizing, right? It's just like, whoa, it's such a softer, easier way to live, actually,
Mm.
to meet each person and be like, oh, your humanity is, it's a mystery to me still. I get to find out who you are and
Mm.
whatever. Um, so I think we have to be gentle with people wherever they are on that match. But I'm like, if someone had just been like, well, fuck anyone who's ever had any experience of the military, I'd be like, well, you would lose out on me and my sisters, all of whom I think are contributing beautiful things to the world, um, and who needed to be politicized. So I'm always reminding people of that, of like, you may have landed in a very clear place or a very sharp edge for yourself, but like, you need to keep bringing people along with you. You need to keep reaching back and helping other people grow more understanding. I'm so grateful that I was politicized before the internet and before social media were like the main way that people were doing this, because I had folks who would sit down. Like, there's no one yelling at me in an online forum of strangers being like, you shameful, ignorant being, like, I had people who were like, I love you. And you just said a really, kind of regressive thing. I don't know. Do you know that do you know that what you just said was actually pretty patriarchal or whatever? And I'd be like, what? Me? So I needed people to love me so that I could really see myself and see how the systems were moving in me, through me, in my life. Um, and they still do, right? Like, I think it's so important for all of us to stay humble, be like, we're swimming in the waters are moving in us. And then we're trying to be intentional, right? Like, okay, what can I transform in my lifetime, of these systems? How many, are there any that I can actually invite out of me? Can I let go of my feeling that I should be better than somebody if, isn't that what makes life worth living or something? And I'm like, I'll let that go. What comes up if I let that go? Um, yeah, I think so much of why we're hard with each other is because we're like, I don't want anyone to think I'm ignorant. I don't want anyone to think badly of me. So we just take on the hardest possible line. It's like, fuck that. I'm like, it's okay to be nuanced. It's okay to be complex. It's important to actually keep thinking for yourself. So the one thing I always say, I'm like, if I see people like, fuck this, right? I'm like, do you feel that way? Or did someone that you think is cool feel that way? Like, what's your actual feeling? How do you actually interact with the people in your life who have different opinions than you? Do you have family who are in the military? Do you have family who are police? Do you have family who are racist? Do you have family who are, right? Like, I just am like, how do you actually interact with those people? That actually is much more important to me than like how hardcore you can perform being online, you know? Um, and like, do you think you could create a compelling enough relationship or vision to invite that person into a new way of being? You know, my sisters and I were able to invite my father out of the military industrial complex after he'd been in the army for 30
Wow.
years. And then he went into being a defense contractor. And one of my sisters sat down and had the conversation with him, um, to express like, we're all anti-war, like, for real, for real. And it matters to us what happens with your soul and if you could get out of this system. And he went, and my parents ended up doing a State Farm insurance, office. And it was hard. It was a different, they had to learn how to be outside of the military world and be a part of a community. And but it was also like, so it's been so beautiful to see what this post-military phase of their life looks like, how woven into family they are, how vibrant their energies are. And I don't know if they would express it this way, but I'm like, I think when you step away from serving death, life can reach you. Life can come back into you and through you and into your relationships. And a lot of our folks don't even realize they're serving death. Like, they've been told a story where it's like, if you join this thing, you'll be protecting your community. It's like, how many innocent people have to die before you recognize that that story might be
Yep.
flawed or might be, propaganda or something else. So, yeah.
I'm curious, as someone who is understands the importance of being person to person, being in front of people, and change happens when we unite in face to face and are present with each other. I'm curious to know what your relationship is with social media, because it's not going anywhere. But
Yeah.
like, what is your relationship with it, and do you have advice for people who, of course, they're going to be on it, but how can they be on it more responsibly, that isn't a hazard to their mental well-being?
Yeah. I mean, I wrestle with this, I think, like anyone in modern life right now. Like, I occasionally hear people who are like, yeah, just, I'm like totally not addicted to my phone. And I'm like, I don't know. Do I believe that person or not? Um, because almost everyone I know, like, when you're around people, you're like, oh yeah, there's a way that we're tethered or tied to each other now. That's like, I don't want to discount the beauty of what happens because we have these devices. right? So for me, one of the things I've been trying to do is like, how do I emphasize the beauty and how do I de-emphasize the harm? How do I make the harm less harmful? Harm reduction method, right? So I use my phone. I've made some transitions, right? So social media, when I first came on, I think like anyone, I was doing a lot of like sharing my pictures of my life and my family and like when I was eating or, dogs I liked or something. And then as my as my light started to get a little bigger in terms of how many people were looking at the page, it started to feel too vulnerable to share that much of my personal life there. A few people, I felt like just stuff happened where I was like, this doesn't feel like a safe place to be putting my loved ones or details that could show someone where I am or different things like that. I started to be like, oh, wary. And so I made a pivot such that if I post about being somewhere, it's usually after I've left that place.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I just shifted altogether into now I'm using it to kind of make this weird art form of these like meme carousel emotional snapshot spells. And for me, it was because I was like, there are beautiful things happening in here and real things happening in here. And I want to gather those because it's like as you're scrolling, there's so much like gossip, destruction, attack, cancellation. Like there's just so much harmful, negative stuff. But I don't think that's like why we came. Like I think it hooks us. There's a part of our humanity that gets hooked into crisis and hooked into drama. Um, but I don't think it's actually what we come for. Like, just like the town square. Like I think it used to be like, I just want to be around people. Now, if people are in the town square doing something awful or having a big fight or something else, like I'm still going to be there. I might be on the edge trying to witness or whatever. I want to be where the people are. And I think there's something about that sense of belonging and getting to be a part of community that I'm trying to hold on to inside of this. So when I put out my little snapshots, again, it's the same thing. I'm like, I want to just know if anyone else is feeling like this particular weird cocktail of emotion, which
Yes.
is like
I'll say yes.
carrying the genocide with the collapse at the end of the nation as we've known it, with like the onslaught of ridiculous, embarrassing news, with the like love stories and like women's sports and like it's just sort of like all this stuff is happening at the same time. And how emotionally can I stretch myself wide enough to like cover the entire ground of being a human right now? That's what I'm trying to do. That's what I'm using it for. Um, but I limit my time on there. And I think that's been a life changing, like game changing practice. I hadn't realized I hadn't realized how easy it was to suddenly just be there for hours. But I noticed that I was like, I'm not writing as much, or like songs are not coming as frequently. Like it just starts to take up all the creative space in your mind because whether you realize it or not, as you're scrolling, you're reacting. Your mind is like having all these reactions. So sometimes you might be the kind of person who's like, oh, I'm gonna make a comment. But even if you're not making the comment, you're having a reaction. So you're spending more and more of your time scrolling through, less and less intentional content, right? Like the algorithm is a little wild. It's designed to like hook you through drama and hook you through crisis and hook you through urgency. So it's not like, oh, when I used to watch the TV for entertainment or something, I'm like, I'm responding to something that was like crafted. That someone was like, I'm going to think about how to make a half-hour story or an hour story. I'm like, now it's just like anybody, anywhere, making anything and just throwing it at you. So you're responding. And I have found that on most days, 15 minutes is all I actually need. But I'll do like 15-minute increments where I'm like, go look for 15 minutes. And then the time limit comes up. It's up now. I'm just like,
Oh.
you've reached your time limit, right? And then I have to be intentional. Like, do I want more time? Do I need more time? Like, because it interrupts the time, then I'm like, well, go just put it down now, right? Or switch over to, I have some games that I'll play that allow my brain to like zone out in a similar way to scrolling, but doesn't take up the creative space. Like I don't have to politically respond to Tetris even in my mind. I just can, like I'm scrolling, getting
Yes,
the boxes where they need to
Tetris.
go. Tetris is one of my all-time like favorite ones to go back to, but like any of these little games where it's like just do some little repetitive thing over and over again. I'm like, if I'm gonna be on my phone, you know, while the TV is on or whatever, like most people do now, I try to make sure I'm not doing that scroll that's like generate it acting pulling the creative part of my brain forward, but not to be used for actual creation. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So that way I feel like I'm reclaiming my creative energy for things that I actually want to make, and dream and imagine and think about. I think the only other thing I would add is like building the offline part of your life with more intentionality. Like I think a lot of times we are turning to our online social media spaces because of loneliness and because of longing and because of like a desire to relate, but then we don't practice relating. Like we don't get ourselves into real connections with people that are not necessarily romantic, right? It's like just I'm just trying to build community and really, you know, just I've been doing that. I moved to Durham, in North Carolina a couple years ago, and it's been like building new community, building new relationships, and making sure that I have people that I'm taking my time to go outside, that I like go to the gym, that I go work out, that I don't know. There's just something about like, oh, I have to be so intentional now to
Mhm.
not just wake up, live my life inside the phone world, and go
Mhm.
to bed,
Yep.
right? Um, and I watched. Do you remember the movie Wally?
Oh my
Uh,
God, yes.
Yeah.
Eva.
Yes.
Oh.
Eva. So exactly. So that movie comes to mind a lot now, like where I'll be in a space where like there's a lot of people that are cool and that I like or love or I'm related to or whatever, but everyone's sitting around on their phones.
yep.
And and then maybe like one person will be like, "Oh, I'll bring food around to everybody in their little phone pocket, or whatever." And I'm like, "Oh no, we're wallying, right? We're like moving in that direction where we just sort of like are with each other, but not with each other, and
Yep.
are with each other, but always tied into something elsewhere." Um, so yeah, my partner, one of my partners has been, well, no, she's just my partner. um, uh, I'm in this like sweet place where I'm just like, yeah, I'm just, falling in love, right? But she keeps being like that. She's like, let's have less phone time. And my sister has done that with her kids where it's just like screens off at a certain time of night. And I think those little things, again, we're not going to turn it around, but I do think we have to find right relationship with it. And I don't think it's constant addiction style, you know? And I say that as someone who's like, there was a time when I was like, as soon as there's a microchip version of a phone where I can just like have it in here and like, have a holographic eyeball or whatever. I want that, right? Like I grew up in the Star Trek world.
Yeah.
I was just like, I want the enhancements. And also like my eyesight started going when I was 9. I have arthritic knees. Like my desire to cyborg is high, I would say, like relatively high. Um, and but I'm like, oh, like it matters that I don't trust the people who are building most of the technology that we're
Yeah.
using for these things right now. And so I'm trying to like keep my wits about me, keep my humanity about me as I navigate this territory.
Uh, can we like not have 4 years between when we talk with you? Hopefully.
Yeah.
It's just such a joy and
Mhm.
it's a good place to be. I know we have to wrap soon. I do want to touch on, I saw something, speaking of social media, on your Instagram about embodied leadership. And I was like, what is that? Do you
Yes.
mind talking
What is
about
that?
that?
I would
Giving a
love
plug?
to.
Because I was
So
like, who is that for?
yeah, I know it's so exciting. Well, um I'm going to be working with the team here. I think it's Sanctuary Embodied. That is putting together this embodied leadership course in the fall. But so it comes out of a group of folks who met, in the trainings for generative somatics. Somatics is that study of embodiment, a study of the body and its wholeness.
Mm.
And it's the idea that like our bodies carry so much wisdom, they carry so much memory, and they're really the vessel, the place from which we're really experiencing this life. And that it's one of the places where like transformation can actually happen in some of the most meaningful ways. So embodied leadership. It's exactly what we've been talking about. Like, how do I stop being in this bubble of perception and projection and performance and actually drop into my real body and be where my feet are and like be where my people are and be here. And what does it mean to lead from an embodied place where it's like I can actually feel my feelings and handle that and not, turn it into some distorted attack or side action or um, untrustworthy leadership. Um, but I can actually slow down, be present, feel my feelings, feel my people. And um, there's something about power, right? That we talk about throughout that world of somatics and embodiment. We talk about a relaxed body as the most powerful body.
Mm.
And it's actually healing that allows our body to relax. It is actually like letting go of some of the trauma that we're carrying, processing it all the way through. And I will tell, I started somatics after doing about 10 years of talk therapy. And I was blown away by the difference in what would happen in a session of somatic support or embodiment support, where I'm like, I've been talking about that for 7 years. And in one session, I was just able to move it through my body. Like, it was like, girl, you already understand everything about it. You just have to let it go. And there's like somatic body work, there's somatic practices and exercises. I always point people, like, if you're really like, I want to understand more about embodiment in general, there's a project called the Embodiment Institute that has an online course where you can just do, it's like, I think, little 5 mini sessions that you can do that are like, how do I get into my body? Like, what daily practices, what orientation, how can I understand what my body is and how to embody my myself into my life more.
Mm.
So I was with the teaching community of generative somatics for a long time, and then kind of retired from that work, retired from facilitation. um, I don't know if retired is the word, but sort of paused on it because
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to navigate celebrity. I was just like, oh,
Mm.
this, even the small scale celebrity that I'm navigating changes what happens when I come into a room, and whether people will like let me hold the room as a neutral body, or whether people will be like, I already have a preconceived notion of who you are and what you believe. And like, that's impacting whether I trust you to hold this room. Right. Or whether I can even focus. Some people just be like, I don't know, you're Adrienne. Like, I can't really, I'm like, oh yeah, like, I don't know what the thing is in your mind. Like, I know I'm just me. Right. So I'm like, I don't fully know what that is, but I do know when I've met people that I like have great admiration for, sometimes it's hard for me to like
Yeah.
listen to whatever they're saying in that moment. I'm like, I don't know, you're just, like, that's when the first time I met Angela Davis was really like that, where I was like, she's saying words. She's saying words
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah.
I should
Yeah.
notice those words, but I was just like, oh my God, do you know who you are?
Yeah.
So this thing happens where you're like, oh, like, I also think that this period of celebritization and all this is going to pass. Like, I don't think it's structured to last. Like
Which part
right
of it
now.
do you mean, if you don't mind me
So I think the idea that like there's going to be like, I think there's only a few people even now who are like the super celebrities where like almost everyone knows them. And I think already there's been this decentralization of celebrity. So like, it depends which pocket of culture you're in. You have
Yeah.
completely different celebrities in every pocket of culture that you're in.
Yeah.
So this is one of the things I have really enjoyed is like, there used to be this amazing organizer conference in Detroit called the Allied Media Conference. And I would go to that. And like towards the last few years, I was like, I'm a celebrity in this pocket. Right.
Mm.
And so it'd be in Detroit. And I was like, I can't even walk from one building to another without people running up to me and telling me, I love you. Right. But then because it's Detroit, then I would walk one block outside of like the conference space and people would be like bumping into me and being like, girl, get out of the way. Like, we're trying to get, our Fagos or whatever. But anyway, it's just like this funny experience of just being like, oh, like, this is a pocketed celebrity experience. And
Mhm.
like, I still get to be a normal person the majority of the places that I'm going to. And I think that's going to happen more and more, where it's just going to be like, oh yeah, like if you like, cyberpunk wrestling or whatever, then there's a celebrity for you, but like only in that world. And then that person gets to live their life. If you're really into, I mean, I think this is already happening. Like, I just started watching The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, and I'm like,
Oh.
wow, like there's a whole Mormon TikTok world, and there's a whole, I mean, like, I'm just like, these people are celebrities that I have never heard of.
Right.
And every day, one of my most favorite humbling experiences as a writer and a thinker is like literally every day I hear about another best-selling, groundbreaking, super well-respected, known writer, and I'd never heard of that person the day before, right?
Mhm.
And I'm like, wow, like this person's had a dynamic, award-winning career. I had no idea that they exist at all.
Mhm.
And like now I do, but like I'm not really retaining this name necessarily unless
Mhm.
I go engage the work. So I think that'll keep happening where there'll be more and more celebrities until it's like everyone kind of is one and no one really is one. And it's all
Mhm.
relative. And then
Mhm.
I think we can, right? But for those of us who now are in that liminal space, the embodiment work becomes so important. I think anyone who's in any leadership role right now, that embodiment work of being like, I have to be really intentional about who I'm going to be right now so that I'm not just caught up in the group think of social media, caught up in any kind of sort of mob mentality. I don't want to be a pure reaction to what my opposition is doing. Like, you know, trees, I think about trees a lot, but I'm like, trees aren't just out here like, oh, that storm just changed my direction. No, trees like, okay, storm came through. I'm still an oak tree. Like I'm still an oak tree, And
Mhm.
I'm like, what is so true in you? What is your oak tree aspect of yourself that is like, no matter what this life brings, like there's a fundamental aspect of me that is fully embodied. And I think because of the 10 years I spent deep, deep, deep in that world, when people meet me, I'm like, I spent 10 years focusing on how to become a deep and oceanic presence of love. Like, I spent a lot of time thinking about that and living into that and being like, my Venus is in Libra. This is my calling. Like, I am supposed to be a goddess of love.
Ah.
And so if that's what I'm trying to embody, then I can't uh it's not like I can't slip, but it's like I have to be really intentional about what that means as a leader. I always think about that. When people ask me to respond publicly, I'm like, if I can't do so from love or with love, then I don't have anything to say about that.
Mm.
Like, that's not what I'm supposed to be doing. When I feel pure feelings of rage and anger, as I do at some of our leaders right now, I'm like, the best thing I can do is keep their names out of my mouth and
Yeah.
add no power or energy to them, like, because my work is love, and so I'm supposed to love the people that they're hurting into fullness, into more power, but you have to choose something. And so that course, the course that we're going to do in the fall is for people who are looking for that, like, okay, how do I deeply land in who I'm meant to be and how I'm meant to lead, from the body out.
I'm very interested in this. Very interested.
Yeah.
Okay, I know
Yeah.
we have to wrap. But I thank you for mentioning where you're coming from in terms of being love. I was thinking about while you were talking, I'm like, you are love. That's how
Mhm.
it feels. So, wow.
I will say this, it's so beautiful. I'm in the process of falling in love or choosing love, really. And it's so interesting to think about all the work. I'm 46, I turn 47 later this year. So when I think about like how long it's taken me in this lifetime, because I come from a very loving family, but I'm like, it's taken a long time to get through the gauntlets of societal
Mm.
um, dehumanization to like reclaim and be like, oh, no, I do like have love for myself in my life and with other people. And it's so interesting. I really do believe that the world would be so different if everybody actually felt loved and lovable. So that's what I'm focusing on. So I'm glad it transmutes. I'm like, because I'm like, love can go through Zoom, love can go through telephone, love can go through letters, like
Oh,
love can go
yeah.
through so many mediums, right?
Mhm.
And I do think that, like, people often will come on my Instagram and they'll be like, you're the only reason I'm on here. And I'm just like, I feel awful. I should get off. I was
Yeah.
like, I wish I keep going between. I'm like, should I just stop being on here so people will really get off here? But then I'm also like, yeah, but I also am like, I want you to receive the love that I'm putting into this space as well. Like when I have the capacity to do so, that's what I'm trying to do. So yeah, the love is my work, and everyone has something, different kinds of work. And there's a lot of people right now who I think are called to battle shadow in themselves and battle shadow in the world. And like, it's actually kind of a different kind of work, but I think it's just as important. I think there's a lot of people right now who need to be um, realists. You know, there's people who have to like help people contact reality, land in reality, process reality, be with reality. Um, so there's like, yeah, there's these big things. I'm like, there's people who have to do this kind of work. There's people who have to do that kind of work. And like, for those whose work is shadow work, I think a lot of it is figuring out how to harness anger into something powerful and collective. Like that's when shadow becomes something powerful and helpful and useful and balanced, the yin and the yang. But I think if it's out of balance and it's just willy-nilly, then as a shadow worker, you can just end up like spun all around and like punching out in every direction. So everyone has to figure out like, how do I center myself in the work that I'm called to do? And it's a way.
We're trying this thing with guests. You'd only be the second guest to do it, and if you don't want to do it, you don't have to. But we're trying to tie in like bitch talk and what we are and who we are. So we're doing this thing called This Bitch. It could be
This
good or
bitch.
bad. I already know you know what that means. I don't have to explain it. If you want to do it, fine, and if you don't, that's fine too.
Well, it's a way to show love or to vent, whatever you decide.
Let's see who comes to mind right now. This bitch. This bitch Beyonce. I have to say, I've been really reflecting. I've been like, I have loved her for a long time, and I carry it with the dualism. This bitch has me like loving someone who I know is a billionaire, even though I don't agree with the existence of billionaires or the entire system of capitalism. But this bitch has me deeply respecting what can happen at such a large scale. This bitch has me interested in the inquiry of reclaiming some aspect of America as the people who built it and the people who have actually created and made it work. And this bitch has me grateful that I live in an era of stadium shows, because I think this is going to be one of the shortest eras of human history. I don't think there's not a long tail. There's not been a long history of stadium shows in the world. And I don't think there's a long future for it, because the climate crises I just think it's going to become like impossible to do things at that scale and to travel at that scale in probably the next 10, 15 years. So I think I'm like, oh, wow. Like we all got to be like the generation that got to experience like, from like Michael Jackson and Madonna to like, yeah, this scale of just being like 70,000 of us are here to worship at the altar of Black feminist awesomeness. And this bitch has us like crying and singing and wearing chaps, and that's powerful. And this bitch also shares my big 3 in astrology. So I have to, I finally was just like, listen, everyone feel what you feel, but I have to stop resisting. Like this bitch has my heart.
That was perfect. Thank you.
It was poetry also. Like, wow, there's some heavy shoes to fill for the next This Bitch.
Yeah. Oops. Sorry for the next person.
I really like that segment. I'm glad you're adding it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being on Bitch Talk again. It's always a pleasure. Speaking of pleasure. Yeah. And we carry you. we think you are a light. So thank you. Thanks for spending time with us.
I think y'all are awesome as well. And yeah, let's talk again in 2 years.
Okay.
Deal.
Thanks for joining us on today's show. You can find more information about this episode in our show notes.
If you're missing us, you can visit us at bitchtalkpodcast.com to sign up for our newsletter and buy us a cup of coffee.
Did you know we're also on the radio? You can find us at bff.fm.
And lastly, rate and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. All the cool bitches are doing it.